So before we get into all that, though, I realized when I mentioned your name to a couple of people, they were like, "Oh yeah, I love that podcast," and I was like, "Well, who is he? Tell me a bit about him." And no one really knew who the real Ryan Bailey was. So I just wanted to start with like, who are you? Who were you as a kid? Where were you born? What did you want to do? All those kind of questions.
Yeah, I mean, really, I was born in Columbus, Ohio, but mainly I grew up in Olathe, Kansas, because my dad was a salesman. So we moved there, and then spent the rest of my time in like Paradise Valley, Arizona, where my dad still lives, and my sister. But yeah, no, I was a nerd growing up. That's shocking to everybody, but I'm a straight dude that likes all this, that loves all of this stuff. I was never into sports. I was found it very hard to relate to other boys, but I could relate to women or girls really easy. And I was so much more fixated on what they loved than ever what guys loved. I found that very boring. Still to this day, it's hard for me to get through any kind of sporting event, even though I appreciate the fandom.
Uh,
And that grew into, growing up in like Olathe, Kansas, it was a great place to have an imagination. I had a big imagination as a kid. I thought like being a superhero was like that could be actually a possible work option up until the age of 13. And I was one of those, like, I just consumed everything media related. And that
mm,
was back before, the internet. So it was like Entertainment Tonight, Access Hollywood, any magazine I could get my hand on, Variety, Hollywood Reporter. As a kid, I knew all of these things. I was obsessed with like box office figures, how much money a movie grossed overseas. And that's
mm.
all like very weird. And then that like kind of led me to theater, and doing like plays in junior high. And then we moved to Arizona, and it was a much bigger high school and a much bigger platform to be able to do, study theater. And I kind of did that. I just fell in love with movies, and pop culture was always this, not a secret shame, but it was not something that was ever really respected.
Mm,
And you could talk about it, and I would mainly talk about it with my guy friends' girlfriends, and now it's
sure.
like their wives. And that would be the conversation I would want to have about what the Kardashians are up to way more. And if I knew anything sporting, it would be like, oh, Tony Romo, that's the guy that dates Jessica Simpson. Like I knew
Right.
sports in that
You could
sense.
associate it with the pop culture phenomenon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then it came to a point where I could have gone to grad school for theater. I chose to go to Los Angeles instead. And I've acted like, very little parts in big things like The Office and How I Met Your Mother. I had big roles in really crappy Lifetime movies. I worked at an acting school for 13 years, like right up to the pandemic. But these things I always loved. This is like something I consumed, but I never thought I could do anything in this realm. I never thought I could be a talking head or a podcaster. I didn't even really know that what that was at one point.
Mm,
So this kind of started out of, there's a little bit of the pandemic in this, where that really is where this kind of started taking hold, where I would do just like 6 hour long podcasts, where it would be kind of like my version of drive time radio. Or,
okay.
like back in the old days, Stern would go like 5 hours a day. And I would just be in my room having a full-time job that I was trying to do online, but that was an acting studio. So it was really hard to coach actors online. And I just ended up talking about all the shows that I like so desperately loved. But the thing was that there's a huge audience out there that love the same exact thing. And it's that one of those things the show tries to lean into, all the things that people tell us we should be ashamed of, but in reality, you can actually learn more about humanity, you can learn more about yourself. There is such exciting things going on in pop culture, and like we even said at the very beginning, it has brushed up against the real world now, where true
Mm.
crime, political events, those are now considered pop culture. So it's been really interesting to study. And at the same time, I'm just really goofy. I like to laugh. I like to be silly. And it has, the show has provided me great solace. But me, myself, I don't know. I really don't think that there's anything that interesting about me in particular. What I think is so interesting is being able to talk about all of these shows. That to me is so interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you were able to create a paying job out of it, as opposed
That's
to
shocking, Rachel.
floundering and no, but really, like, a lot of people try and figure out their purpose, or they're trying to figure out how they're going to make money to sustain their livelihood or whatever they want to do, and I think you obviously have found your niche, don't you think?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, this is like, I really, this every day I pinch myself. I mean, this is the hardest I've ever worked at anything in my life, but it's that old adage of like, it doesn't feel like work if it's something you truly love.
Right.
But it is funny that every day I'm like, oh wow, this is why I liked these things as a kid. It's actually paying off now. But like, it is fat, like for people like you to when I got reached out even by you, I was like, oh my God, it's fantastic. That's amazing. I get to share a conversation with you. I mean, there are so many people like you guys. If you ever want to talk to fabulous people, start a podcast. You're going to
Right.
be able to have conversations that you never thought you would be able to have. Because in my real life, I'm nervous. I don't like I am very awkward in real life. But if you put a microphone on me, it becomes so much better for be able to communicate and listen.
Right. And also, when you put a microphone in front of you and talk about content that you really innately know,
Yeah.
it's not like you have to study it. It just comes naturally to you, obviously. And that's what
Yeah.
I found that I love too. I mean, I feel like for a long time, I really struggled with finding my purpose. And now that I have this podcast that truly, is for people that have been reduced to a single headline and are on a mission to change their narrative, or to cover topics that I feel like need to be, tested again or tried again, or people need to listen to them again and hear other sides, because they're so used to hearing just one side or the narrative that the media gives. I think it's a really important place to be. And I love, like you said, having conversations with people that I'm interested in their story, or I've read about, or people have read about me and they get to ask me questions. So it's really fun for me and I love it. And I wouldn't want to do anything else.